So I've been working hard on writing a sermon. And I've started 3 different sermons, and this is actually a compilation of all 3 of those sermons put together. I did not want to do this sermon this way. I have fought the Holy Spirit on the sermon this way. But it is probably the best way to present Neil's information and for you guys to get the understanding that it actually works. Do you know that your bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. 1 Corinthians 6:19 through 20. Do you believe Christ died on the cross and purchased you with his blood? I think we all do. I hope we all do here. If not, I'm praying for you all. Then we are all in agreement that our bodies are his holy temple. You are not your own. You were bought at a price. God paid a ransom for you. He redeemed you at an infinite cost. What price was that? That price was the blood of Christ. Oops, too far. Oh. Every time my mouse moves, it's moving. No, it's still flipping. All right, now I even lost my mouse. I don't want to stay there for nothing. How do you treat your temple? How do you treat a temple of the Holy Spirit? Do you neglect it and forget to take out the garbage? Do you put off renovations and updates? How do you do your renovations? Do you do a patch job? Or do you pry out the rotten areas and replace it with something new and better? Updated information. How often do we do this? Well, my temple wasn't working right. I knew that last summer actually already. I couldn't think straight. I wanted to crawl under my desk at work and just die. Really, I did. I was exhausted. I was tired. I hurt. I couldn't function. I knew something was up. We have a huge history of diabetes in our family, so I was thinking it was diabetes, but when I did my blood sugars weren't adding up to what I was feeling to. So I finally broke down and went to my doctor for a physical in August. I not only had anemia, my iron levels were so low, they were almost non-existent. I had swollen glands and lymph nodes. I had vision issues, vision blurring. I couldn't focus. My lab works were really off. They were very funky. They had some things that would actually cue in for lymphomas and cancers, but when we went to do the testing for that, those did not come out right. I ended up with 6 different meds from that doctor's visit. I was referred to an oncologist, hematologist, rheumatologist, an eye doctor, and a geneticist I eventually saw too as well. My weight at that point in time was 262, my pulse was 88, and my blood pressure was up there too. (140/92). Ultimately, after a couple of months of seeing doctors and many tests, what they came out with was an autoimmune disease called psoriatic arthritis. Similar to rheumatoid arthritis, it's just first now getting press in the last 4 or 5 years. It's not something that's been out there all or known about for very long. Usually psoriasis is a precursor. I've had psoriasis almost my entire life. Not a huge amount, not anything that ever bothered me or I was really concerned about going out in public with. But I've had it. It comes and it goes. Psoriatic arthritis usually is worse in the mornings. Some people can't even walk in the morning when they get up. It gets better as the day progresses. It usually affects your smaller joints, your hands and your feet. Part of the reason why I probably couldn't type so well at work anymore. Can affect your vision, not all the time, but it does. Doesn't usually affect glands and the lymph nodes. We couldn't figure out for the life of us why I was still having issues with my swelling glands and lymph nodes. Psoriatic arthritis triggers. You guys will not be surprised to hear this. This is what we preach. Red meat, sugar, dairy, gluten, certain processed foods, and some nightshades will also cause reactions to psoriatic arthritis. None of the doctors that I saw talked to me about elimination diets, but it was in one of the pamphlets that they handed to me. And it talked about gluten sensitivities, and it talked about sugar and dairy and all those different types of things that can interfere, and people's sensitivities with those. Well, I always knew I had a dairy sensitivity, but we live in the dairy state. And it's really hard to give up, especially when you grew up on a farm. So dairy was one of the first things to go. Sugar was already gone. I have 2 ADHD kids. That's a no-brainer. Food colorings were already gone, most preservatives. We cooked most of our stuff from scratch. And they're giving me the glare back there. He knows it. He experienced it. He knows he functioned better on a good diet, too. So, so I went on an elimination diet. Gluten and dairy, I eliminated totally out. Notice I haven't said anything about red meat yet. My husband is a hunter and fisherman, obviously. One of the things about 4 years ago, we moved to an old farmhouse who had a minister next door raising beef. He raised his beef not well, shall we say. The cattle were up to their stomachs in manure. They were sometimes, because he didn't water them, drinking their own urine. He didn't always feed them correctly, so they would be bellowing for days on end. And that was his cattle. You can't imagine what the pigs were doing to themselves. So after that point in time, I'd go to the store and look at the meat and walk away from the aisle. My husband would wonder why we weren't getting meat, and I said, you're only getting what you can hunt and fish, because I cannot eat what that. If this is a minister out there, what is somebody who's doing this for profit out there trying to make a living off of it willing to do? So I told him, it's what you hunt and fish, that's all. We always had, up until last year, deer in our freezer. It is interesting, when I started this road, that our supply has been cut off, and it continues to be cut off. Needless to say, he's still out there hunting and trying to get venison. But, 48 to 72 hours after I started this diet, I no longer needed my inhaler. I've been on an inhaler since Daniel was born, 12 plus years. I couldn't understand it. I didn't know what it was, but I was thrilled for it. My inhaler was gone. My allergy meds were gone. My reflux was almost gone. I went off almost all of my meds in the first 10 days of this elimination diet. Within 10 days, my pain levels were at least down to tolerable, where I wasn't begging the doctors for pain medications. And we're now in the day and age where they don't prescribe narcotics anymore. So I did not get anything but an anti-inflammatory. And I'm glad of that now, but at that point in time, I was like, just give me something to stop the pain. My brain fog started to clear. You have no clue until you've lived in a fog how hard and difficult it is to live and to function and to work. I am the supervising RN of stay-at-home care. We are an office. Our Lena office has, we figure, about 120 clients right now. We opened up a Sherwood office a little over a year and a half ago, and they have almost 100 clients right now. So I have about 60 clients, plus I supervise all the other nurses and nurses' aides. under us. So working in that fog was next to impossible. Doing research and interviews with some of the clients, because we have to do our own investigations when there comes something lost in a client's home. That was really hard to do, and trying to figure out who and what was going on. Oops. No doctors, out of all the doctors, nobody questioned lifestyle. Nobody mentioned anything about diet to me. Not even my rheumatologist, who was treating me for the psoriatic arthritis. Vitamin D is an ultimate thing for anybody who has psoriasis. We don't make enough of it. We don't get enough of it. There's a blocker in that process. We can't get enough sunlight, literally, sometimes. So nobody told me I should go on supplements. I just started reading, and I added vitamin D, and I also added, at that point in time, fish oils for the omega-3s. So apparently lifestyle changes are no longer taught by physicians. I mean, they teach us as nurses in nursing school, but we don't see the clients but 5 minutes anymore either. So who's going to teach our clients out there? I have clients with cases of Mountain Dew sitting next to their chair, and they're complaining they can't get up and walk anywhere. I'm like, you got your remote control here, and you got your Mountain Dew there, and your potty sitting over here. So no, you do need to get up, and you do need to move. Oops. Things I found out that became fairly clear fairly fast. Pain became tolerable. I'd try and cheat on my diet and bring things back into my diet. Dairy had an adverse effect on my breathing, my asthma and sinuses. I never would have thought it would have had that much of an influence on them. Gluten had an adverse effect on my pain and brain fog. Now, after I got to know a little bit more about Nedley, he does not include a gluten-free diet into his works. But there is a small portion of us who are gluten sensitive, and those that have psoriatic arthritis or psoriasis have an increased chance, and those who have family members who have celiac have an increased chance. I have both. My family did not like the gluten-free thing at all. They still don't. But they do much better on it, too. Dairy and nightshades together caused pain, but nightshades by themselves have no issues. I have no issues with. Interesting. Meat. Like I said, I didn't get rid of it right away until I heard Dr. Nedley's talk, which will be in February. Right about now, I'm working around the holidays. I had already years ago told my husband that he couldn't hunt or fish. Meat was limited, but not out of our diet. So we did have some meat, but not a lot going on. We obviously had no processed meats going on, except for what he actually makes his own bacon and sausage. So those were the only two that we get that was processed, if you want to call it that. In January 2017, I was improving, but not as fast as my rheumatoid doctor wanted me to do. He wanted to add another medication on. I didn't. I thought this one was enough. I had enough side effects with it. When he realized I was still having side effects with it, he put me on folic acid, which actually counteracts some of those side effects. The nurse was very pushy, though. She would call me up every other week and say, you need to go in for these labs to get started on this other medication. And I'd be like, no, sorry, I don't have time. We went back and forth with her over the phone several times, and I'm like, I just couldn't understand why they weren't teaching more when I was doing this with diet, a lot more than I was actually doing this with medications, and why they weren't teaching more diet, more exercise, more anything. It just kind of surprised me and floored me. February 2017, Dr. Neil Nedley presented down at WA. Anybody from here go down? Nobody, okay. Well, I was told that the depression and anxiety seminar he was putting on was specifically for the WA high school students. Well, I have 2 teenage boys with ADHD, and I was told that presentation would also help them. I was like, anything to help these guys out and get them to think clearly. So, Michael knows, we drove down there That was the most hair-raising experience I have ever experienced in my life. I never want to do that again. It probably was for him too. When we left, there was almost nothing up in Crivets. It was a beautiful light snow day up in Crivets. We got to Appleton, and there was 4, 5 accidents. We got an hour or more behind our schedule because we were piled up. Yeah, because of the crashes we were going through. It was like one after another after another. I got south of Appleton, and I realized we are no longer on the time schedule we needed to be on. I had built in an extra hour to stop and eat. I let the boys get out, go to the bathroom, pick a sandwich or something to eat, and we got back on the road. I wanted to stop for supper, but it wasn't going to happen anymore. One of the problems I had this whole time was part of my job is driving. I have a pretty good sense of direction, a lot better than my husband. But with all the brain fog and other issues, I would tire really, really fast. And I caught myself in Marinette about 6 weeks before this, lost. I had driven into the place I needed to go into without an issue. But by the time I was done with my admission process with my client, I pulled out of their driveway, looked around, and had no clue where I was. My husband did not want me to go. I said, I have Michael. He has a driver's license. He can drive too. I wasn't letting him on the roads we were on. It started to be freezing rain. Everything was glare ice. All I can say is God sent his angels to carry us all the way through. We spent, I think 40 was my max for my mileage per hour to get there, from Appleton to WA. If we were lucky. One of the cool things we did find out about those little things on your phone, those little road things, is they will tell you where the accidents are and what's happening with them, or how bad traffic is at that point in time. So it would tell you red if there was a road barricade or a block up or something like that, because we did come across some places that they actually blocked off. So we managed to get down there about 20 minutes, I think it was, before the meeting started. And I finally ate my salad that I had picked up at the gas station hours before. And I was hoping to go straight to the hotel and check in and stuff, and I was like, nope, we made it this far. Even if I have to sleep in the pews at church tonight, I'm doing it. So we got there, and we listened to his presentation, which was very good. I hope the boys took a little bit out of it. But I sat there and with my jaw open, I think the bulk of the time, looking at it going, I can't believe this is me. This is half of my population that I take care of. He says this program works just as well on depression and anxiety as well as his autoimmune people. And I'm looking at it going, autoimmune. That's me. Mental disorders alone, he gave the statistics, 37.3 in the United States. Addictive disorders alone in the United States, 14.6. Mental and addictive disorders together, 8.9. A total of 60%. That's just the diagnosed ones. That is not the undiagnosed. I am an undiagnosed. I knew I had seasonal depression. Every year, as soon as January hit, I knew I was in it. As soon as March hit, I knew I was coming back out of it. There is lots and lots of people out there who are undiagnosed depression. Anybody who has a chronic disease, your risk has just doubled for depression. That does not include your anxiety people who are not diagnosed. My mom is an anxiety person. She is not a diagnosed anxiety person. She's a diagnosed depression. She has anxiety and depression. So I'm looking at this program and going, oh my goodness, why are we not teaching this? Whoops. It's very touchy. Symptoms of major depression: deep sadness or emptiness, apathy, agitation and restlessness, sleep disturbances, weight and appetite disturbances, lack of concentration, feelings of excess guilt or worthlessness, morbid thoughts, fatigue. How many of you that even have one, think of that. 2 puts you into minor depression. Yeah. 5 to 9 puts you into a major depression. Now, there's people out there with major depression undiagnosed. Minor depression I can see going by, but major depression, when you look at that list, I can name a couple of people in my life right now that have major depression and aren't recognizing it as major depression. I was obviously at this point in time in a major depression. By the way, we did get down there all right. I thought with all the stress and everything that we had going down there and coming back, that I would have a total relapse back to all the pain and everything. Fortunately, and thankfully for God, I did not. I thought I was going to go back to those pain issues, to the fog. I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to drive home the next day. And, they went to sleep and I drove. But then the roads were beautiful. It was cold, but it was beautiful. And the next morning was the most gorgeous morning you ever could imagine. Everything was just beautiful. Nutrition. Dr. Nedley recommends a vegan, whole food, simply made diet. Lots of fruits, lots of veggies. Yeah, they're laughing back there. They know what I push. Nuts and seeds. I was trying lots of recipes. Some worked, some did not at all. Some of them I thought were never going to work and I was never going to pull off, and they ate them. And some of them were their favorites. My whole family was eating cashew sauce and casseroles for almost 3 months before Michael caught me putting the cashews in the blender. Yeah, see, they're still not even knowing it, some of them. I flipped my fish oils to flaxseed. I started adding a lot more flaxseed into the diet. I believe Dr. Nedley recommends 2 tablespoons of flaxseed a day per person. It's an amazing amount to get all your omega-3s. You do not need fish oil. You can convert the omega-3s that are in flaxseed into what you need. So don't let anybody convince you otherwise. Because I've been a couple DHA, see, I got, when I'm nervous. For seminars for the kids where they keep telling us you have to give them omega-3s through fish oil, fish oil, fish oil. And I actually found they take the flaxseed a lot better because it doesn't taste as bad. Just ask Daniel. Yeah, he's not taking his lately. They turn 18 and then they think they can do whatever they want. They're good kids. Don't tell them that, though. I keep telling them they're not, so that they keep coming back for. All right, and we went to no meat. Well, I went to no meat. We still had, the freezer was empty for the most part of meat. And don't tell my husband if he does get a deer. I'm not quite sure where we're going with it because I have already overflowed the meat freezer with vegetables this year. What? Yeah. It's at least half full of veggies, so. My garden, my very favorite thing is to garden. Garden and kids are my things. We have a foster license as well. That's been an interesting run, too. But my garden did absolutely terrible. It was drowned out this year. From the blessings of people who know me who have had overflowing gardens, I have an overflowing freezer. Exercise. Something I was not doing, something I do not prefer to do. My exercise is gardening. Well, it's what, February in Wisconsin? Really? I don't wanna. Dr. Nedley's recommendations are rhythmic motion of large muscle groups. Examples, walking, jogging, swimming, cycling. 30 minutes at least 3 times a day, or 3 times a week. 3 times a day, yeah, well, I'm almost there. Or 30 minutes 6 times a week is better. He talked about burst training. That was the first time I was introduced to burst training. I think I had heard of it about once or twice before. I really wasn't sold on the whole idea, so I was like, walking will do. If I got to do it, I'll do it. I had an elliptical machine that we moved with us when we moved into the house. It was downstairs for 3 years. I hadn't touched it. It was rarely touched. I had to dust it off, clean it up. I looked at it, went, ugh, I don't want to do this, but I did it. My first time, I made 12 minutes. I didn't make my goal of 30 minutes at all. I'm like, this is harder than I remember it to be. Quite frankly, I was still in quite a bit of pain yet. I wasn't out of pain, but I was doing better. I actually progressed quite fast to the 30 minutes of walking. I did it at night after I put the kids to bed. Quietest time, simplest time not for me to be not interrupted. I kept reading how much a morning schedule was better for you. I was not willing to get up another half an hour earlier. It hurt in the morning. I hurt in the morning. And 5 days a week, I really didn't even want to do that. But the Lord has a way of having this voice here until you give up and give in, and okay, I did it. I was doing about 2 miles on the elliptical machine, and it was coming on to spring. I'm doing pretty good. I can take care of this. This is working. The elliptical machine started spewing little metal shavings on the floor next to me. My husband looked at it and he says, there's a bearing going on it. He says, you better not use it because you don't want the bearing to go out. I'm like, okay, Dr. Nedley did say that it's better to do your exercise outside in the sunlight with fresh air, green grass, and green trees around you. Here I go. I've had 3 knee surgeries. When I was 21, I was dragged 40 acres by a horse. We were just married. We weren't even married a year. It was Thanksgiving Day. I was brought to the Marinette Hospital. And my husband at the time was also an EMT. And he was standing at the desk, and the nurses said, she's never going to walk again. He did not tell me that until about 3 years later. There was no orthopedic surgeon right there in Marinette at the time this happened because it was Thanksgiving and they only had one, and he was on vacation. I was shipped to Green Bay. I got lucky enough to get one of the docs that had worked with the Packers at the time, and he said this technology would not be here in Green Bay if it were not for the Packers. And they put in new ligaments, all of them, ligaments and tendons. And I had to have one surgery following another. A couple of months later, I had another surgery. But I was walking. Maybe not well, but I was walking. So going outside and running was kind of a thing for me because I don't run. I kind of hop, skip, jump, limp. I don't know what you want to call it. Yes, they pick on me about it. I have one leg that's still shorter than the other, and running's... So burst training sounded really good for me. You walk past the neighbors' houses as they're getting up, and you run past the trees so that nobody could see you run, right? So I did burst training finally. It works. I even had Daniel and Sam came out a couple of mornings with me and enjoyed it. It was getting pretty dark towards the start of towards this fall. And I converted back into my elliptical machine because we almost got run over one morning by a truck. Even with flashlights and whatever else we were carrying, it wasn't safe anymore. Ours is kind of a cut-across road that they use for the general roads there. And so we went back in and started working out. Well, my machine actually gave way a couple of months later. It was almost a month later, actually. And full-fledged spewing, you could hear all over the basement, ding, 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 ding. I'm like, okay, we got to order something. I had looked all summer long for something up in our area for treadmill, elliptical, anything. I had just ordered something, but it wasn't supposed to come in until the end of the week, Friday. That night, I walked into our doors, and it's sitting on our porch. I could not believe it, that it arrived 2 days early. So I had thought, well, Friday, I don't have to exercise Thursday morning. Friday, I don't work. I can just go out later and run out on the road. And nope, it was there, and I got to do my workouts. It's kind of amazing how few workouts I have actually missed. His room is right next to the elliptical machine, so he gets to hear me every morning. I came across a lot of ADHD information. My brain still was not focusing as much as I had hoped. And even reading some of Natalie's stuff, I'm like, 4 miles? I don't want to do 4 miles. I don't want to do an hour. It's amazing. The thing you dislike the most, the Lord kind of picks at you the most with. And it keeps picking at you. And the more I said I don't want to do it, the more he kept bringing information back to me on it, that you need more exercise in your life. I have a sit-down job. I am either on the computer, I am on the phone, I am doing paperwork, or I'm in the car driving. That is what my job consists of. What do we do when we come home? I get the kids supper, you get them ready for bed, and you get them in bed, and you go to bed too. So that's my day, is mostly sit down. So I was like, another half an hour's worth of time. Where am I going to find that to work out? I thought about putting him back in the night routine, but when we go through sleep, the sleep before midnight is best. So I did not want to put that back into my night routine. I wanted to put it in my morning routine if I had to. But quite frankly, I wasn't doing it. And I told the Lord that. One night I was so tired and I was so exhausted. I said, Lord, if you really want me to do this, you're going to have to get the Prybar out in the morning and get me out of bed early. Well, guess what? There's smiles. Everybody knows what happens on that one. What do you think he did? Yep, I'm 45 years old and I almost fell out of bed. Not once, but twice. I think he literally got the Prybar and got me out of bed. Yeah, I got up. I went down and worked out. I figured it out. I did my devotionals and went down and worked out. The next couple of days, in order to keep me on task, it was, Mama, I'm wet, or Mama, I have to go to the bathroom. Incredibly, right at 4:30. I can't imagine that timing. Let's see, we had a mouse in the wall one morning. There was a possum chewing on the house. My husband went out and shot the possum chewing on the house. It was like, I can't believe this. But literally, the Lord got the Prybar out. And believe it or not, I have functioned much clearer, much better than I have ever functioned in probably at least 3 years, if not more, since I started that. I was doing 2 miles in a half an hour. I am now doing, on average, 6 to 7 miles in an hour. The new elliptical machine, when I first got it, I found out why the bearing went out on the other. I have been favoring my right leg that has had 3 knee surgeries on it. This machine does not allow me to do such a thing. It's very noisy, though, as Michael can attest to. It squeaks. Another thing I learned from Dr. Nedley, deep breathing exercises. Something I didn't implement either right away. Until my frustration level in the car with 2 boys fighting every morning on their way to church school got the best of me. I'm like, deep breathe, deep breathe. Okay, so believe it or not, it helps. It's amazing. I really think that's the thing that brought my pulse down from those high 80s and 90s down to 58, literally, is where I kind of sit. 58 and 60 now. It can be done anywhere, anytime. I usually do it on the way into work in the morning. It's a half an hour that I do. That I do every morning. I don't get much more than that. They're looking for Dr. Nedley's minimal is an hour. But the kids don't seem to fight much. I don't know. Are they not fighting as much, or is it me tolerating them a little better? Classical music is another one. I've always loved classical music. It's not something I've always listened to, but it is something I've always loved. There's tons and tons of research out there. One of the things I love to do in my pastimes, I'm a nurse with a bachelor's degree and some master's training. I didn't finish my master's. But I love reading research papers. Strange thing, I know. But there's tons and tons of research out there on how classical music can improve mood and mental function. What about King Saul? David played the harp for him. Why? Because of his moods. Talk about somebody who had some sharp mood swings there going on. Towards the end, obviously, it wasn't working for him. He needed a little more cognitive behavioral therapy, which we'll get into a little bit later. The only instrument you need to know how to play is the radio. I hate to tell you all that. You have to figure out how to play the radio. I had Michael put a little app on my phone, and yeah, I got to listen to commercials. It's a free app, though. And I put in classical music for the brain, or I put in classic hymns, because your classic hymns will also improve your brain, both your mental function and your mood status. So it's kind of interesting. Can be done anywhere, anytime. You can play it at work. You can play it at home. I'm partial to piano and flute. One of the things, you need more of the uplifting music, though. You need it's almost a march type tone to it. So that's one of the songs that comes on in my playlist every morning is our closing hymn. So that's why, and you'll notice when you listen to it, you almost want to get up and march and pick up. When it comes on, I'm already picking up my pace because I already know you can feel it. You can feel that tempo going with you. So I do not do a regular cardiovascular workout music set. So, whoops, I went the wrong way. Sleep. I have had sleep issues my entire life. I have had restless legs my entire life. So if you've been out there and you know what those are like in the evening when you're trying to get to sleep. Sweet side effect of exercising. My restless leg syndrome is almost gone. The days I don't exercise, I have issues. So the only day I don't exercise is Sabbath. The only night I have issues getting to sleep is Saturday night. Otherwise, I am good the rest of the week. I am out in just a few minutes, literally. And it was a minimum of an hour previous to that. 7 to 8 hours are the recommendations. We've all heard that before. The hours before midnight are best. They're almost like double of what your hours after midnight are. Don't ask me why. Nobody seems to know, but the research is proving it. So really, our old proverbs, early to bed, early to rise, or the early bird gets the worm, believe it or not, there is more truth to that than there isn't. Our grandparents knew something. Positive thinking. Another thing you got to do. Count your blessings. Avoid negative thinking. Try going a week without saying something negative. See how far you get. I don't think I get 2 hours. I keep trying, everyone, and then I'm like, oh. Try and reword things so they're more positive. Other thing that both helps mentally and with your IQ. Everybody knows what your IQ is, right? That's your smarts, your brains, how well you're using them. Your EQ. Anybody know what your EQ is? Your emotional quotient. That's how well you think through a process and can handle things coming at you. It's how well you do with your day-to-day functions, your life. It's something Dr. Nedley talks about a lot. EQ is what helps you deal with depression and anxiety and compulsive behaviors and all those types of things. Daily spiritual devotions. We've all known they help us. We've all figured that out. Psalms and Proverbs are the best, especially if you have an anxiety disorder or a depression disorder. They lift mood, especially for those who are depressed. Best results, again, are in the morning. There's a couple of things that should go on immediately in the morning that they have found the most EQ people, people with their highest emotional quotient, do. And that's their devotions, prayer, and exercise. So if you have your choices of what to do in the morning, do those. When I was in college, I thought this was funny. I went to Bellin College of Nurses. At the time I was in college, they had just had a nursing or a research program came out from one of the big Yale or over out east. And they were encouraging us to read our Bibles because they had found out those people, even if they're not Christian, if they're atheists and they're reading their Bibles, their IQ actually went up over a period of time. They could not repeat that with reading like The Grapes of Wrath or just common literature. It had to be the Bible. They tried to repeat it with any type of literatures, even textbooks and stuff like that. They could not repeat it. So our school was actually encouraging us, and they put out a class, I think it was called something like the Bible and Literature or something like that, or Literature as the Bible. Or so it was something very basic that they put out so that they could get us to read our Bibles so our IQs would go up, so we could pass our nursing exams. A couple of proverbs for the brain and bones. The light of the eyes rejoiceth in the heart, and a good report makes bones fat. Proverbs 15:30. Pleasant words are as a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and health to the bones. Proverbs 16:24. Hydrotherapy. Dr. Nedling mentioned this when I was there in February. Think positive here. I don't prefer cold of anything at any point in time. But as this process has gone, I've learned that if I hit something 3 times in a row within a week's time, I need to start paying attention to it. So I heard it at Dr. Nedley back in February. We're probably now looking at May-ish. And I read it 3 times in some nursing information I was getting, and I had come across it in one of my old nursing manuals. I'm like, okay, the Lord's telling me something again. I need to do this. So I started hot, cold showers. Hot, I love. Cold, my family knows better. It was, how's the song go? Put your left hand in, shake it all about, and put your right hand in, shake it all. I really don't like cold. So I was just attempting this, as we were going into camp meeting. And then I heard Mike and Amy talk on it. And a little light bulb went off all of a sudden. Since I had started those hot and cold showers, even though I didn't like them, my lymph nodes and my glands and the swelling was going down and staying down. And their presentation had put that light bulb on. I have worked that in as much as I can because I have 2 teenage boys that shower before me in the morning. So there's not much hot water left. But I have worked that into my schedule now at least 3 times a week. And believe it or not, I have not had major issues with my lymph nodes swelling up since then. Sweet thing. Water, 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 water. I've always known I don't drink enough water. I had already cut out sodas, teas, coffees, anything with caffeine, probably way back in May of 2016 already. I knew that was already an issue, as having heart palpitations, shaking, that type of thing. I knew it needed to go. I was a nurse, I knew that much. I had figured that much out. So I had a soda back in the spring for some reason or another. I was at a client's house or something, and I suffered that for like 10 days. That was not a good thing for me to do again. I went back to heart palpitations. I shook like crazy for 3 days. I knew what it was from, and I knew I had to cut it out again. I couldn't do it again. So I have cut almost everything and anything that has caffeine in it. Other lifestyle changes. Sunlight, very, very good. Helps regulate your night-day routines. We are in the middle of winter here in Wisconsin. Along with that elliptical machine, I have bought me, and Daniel and I share it because Daniel has severe depression, seasonal depression as well, and he's only 13. So we share it in the morning. I do my devotionals under it for 20 minutes, half an hour, and then he gets it while he's actually in bed sleeping. I put it on its brightest thing. And I go down and work out, and when I come back up, I wake him up. He's much easier to get up. He goes to bed on time. I don't hear him up half as much in the middle of the night scrounging through the refrigerator. So it even works while their eyes are closed because he's not waking up. He barely wakes up when I come in. He has told me now, though, he'll start coming down and working out. So I keep asking him every morning. He hasn't done that yet. Fresh air. We need to go out and get fresh air. Even Ellen White talks about fresh air. We need to get it. Again, I'm not appreciative of the cold maybe as much as I should be, but I promised my husband I'll do wood with him this winter. So, so we will see how much wood he needs. He's got stacks of wood already, but cognitive behavioral therapy. Daniel and I are reading, I believe it's called SOS Help for Emotions. One of the Dr. Nedley didn't write it, but it's one of the books he promotes, and it's going to be one of those, if you come to his Dr. Nedley classes, that you're going to be reading. So I figure I have to get it in before I start teaching it and preaching it. We're working on it. Stress controls. Eliminate those stressors in your life that you don't necessarily need. There may be some people or some things in your life you may need to get rid of. And there may be other social supports you may need to bring in. Owning a pet. That is a stress reliever, believe it or not, and an antidepressant. It's almost as good as a pill in some cases, they found out. We are programmed to take care of others. And therefore, when we have a pet to take care of, we have something a little more to live for. Where am I now? Seldom do I have pain. Very seldom do I have pain. Even when I'm sick now, I judge more on how swollen I am. If I can wear my wedding band and get it off good, this is my original wedding band, I'm doing great. Most of that time, I was wearing my mother-in-law's wedding band, which is about 3 sizes larger, because my hands were that swollen. I have been in this one for probably 4 or 5 months now, and I have not had to change it back over. I am thrilled with that. That means my swelling has gone down. My inflammatory markers have gone down. I see my rheumatologist at the end of this month. I was still elevated in inflammatory markers, but when I told him my pain was gone, he really did not believe me, to tell you the honest amount of truth. He still wanted to put me on meds. But when I told him I was down to where I had been previous to this, he let me be. I don't yell as much. I don't have headaches as much. I'm not foggy as much. I can fairly well think through a process, I think. I'm actually down to 1 medication for my psoriatic arthritis. I take the folic acid on top of that to counteract the side effects. I take the D3 and I take the flax oil. That's all I take. Literally, that's all I take. I looked at my medicine cabinet and I'm like, I got to throw all this out because I have not had this stuff. I have not taken them really since I switched that diet way back in September. I have not taken any of that other stuff. I have not taken a pain med, I don't think, in probably 6-8 months. I have found showers. The hot-cold therapy is wonderful for the pain. My weight. I was 262 when I started this. I am down to 222. Hence, the happiness for the new wardrobe this week. I think I got it on Tuesday night. I could almost fit 2 of me in some of the pairs of pants I was wearing. My husband brought home a box of belts a couple months ago and said, here, use these. So I was ecstatic to get new clothes that actually fit. Actually, some of them are a little small, so I'm taking that as a precursor that I still need to lose some weight, obviously. But pulse. My pulse is down to 58 instead of being in the 80s and 90s. I have never in my entire life had a pulse down in the 58, 60 range. Never. I could easily get my blood pressures down to the 116s, 160s previously with exercise. I didn't like it. That's why the elliptical machine was there. Every time my blood pressure would pop up, I'd go exercise until I could get it back down, and that would work for 6-8 months. But my blood pressure is way down now. I'm happy for that. Do I always get it right? No. Maintenance is hard. There are days I want to give up. There are days I do give up. There are days I don't do so well at all. Just talk to my family. I'm where I should be at. Am I where I should be at with my diet? No. I still have things I need to work on in my diet. Are there things I need to work on at other places in my life? You bet. But I have to trust. I have to trust that God will help me through. Trust in the deliverance offered by Jesus Christ. Trust in the power of a God who created me, a God who loves me, and who even died for me. I do mess up, and I know I am not always where I need to be, but when I feel I can't change or continue on, I have to be willing to hand over the Prybar to God. Then trust that God can do it for me. He won't take it from me, and quite frankly, I'm not always willing to give it up. But I have learned and am learning to trust through it all. I ask you again, how do you treat your temple of the Holy Spirit? What might make you finally take stock and realize you can't keep abusing your body or the Holy Spirit's temple? Well, what will get you to start working on some maintenance? How sick or how angry or how tired do you have to be before you can start working on it? My recommendation is hand over the Prybar and give the control to God. Trust in His power to give you the strength to make the right decisions. These results may surprise you. Jesus said, I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. John 10:10. God wants to give us life, not to take it away. We were meant to enjoy life, not to suffer through it. The Holy Spirit is in you. You are the temple of the Holy Spirit. We all need to remember that when we make these decisions. Honor God with our bodies. How? He tells us that too. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it for the glory of God. 1 Corinthians 10:31.